Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. I'm Corporal Julie Yingling, the Public Information Officer for the St. Mary's County Sheriff's Office. As you know, we're here to discuss a case of threats of mass violence. With me today to discuss this case will be Superintendent for St. Mary's County Public Schools, Dr. Scott Smith, Sheriff for St. Mary's County Sheriff's Office, Tim Cameron, State's Attorney for St. Mary's County, Richard Fritz. And without further ado, if you could start the slideshow. And I will turn this over to Dr. Smith.
In this time when tensions are running so high across the nation, our first priority is keeping kids safe at school. Last week we held a school safety information night and we stressed, if you see something, say something. Our best measure against those intending harm is to proactively identify risk and take action before tragedy occurs. We do this by sharing information with the proper authority as quickly as possible. This is exactly what happened shortly before midnight on Thursday last week. A concerned community member reached out to an SMCPS administrator and shared that students overheard two boys talking on the bus about the recent school shooting in Florida and discussing how they would have done it differently. The Office of Safety and Security identified the two students and contacted the Sheriff's Office to conduct a home visit. The students and their parents were served a verbal no trespass order for all St. Mary's County Public School buildings while the investigation was being conducted. And all of this happened between midnight and 6 a.m. On Friday morning, SMCPS staff arrived at work, pulled the bus video, and made it available to the Sheriff's Department for their investigation. And at this point, the investigation was in the Sheriff's hands, and I will ask Sheriff Cameron to discuss the investigation. Sheriff Cameron.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Sheriff Tim Cameron. On Thursday, February 15th at approximately 2:51 hours, two male Leonardtown High School students were on the afternoon bus ride home and were overheard by witnesses discussing the recent shooting in Parkland, Florida at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. The two students made statements that they would bring guns to school and had the necessary tactics to exceed the number of persons killed at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. The St. Mary's County Board of Education's Office of Safety and Security contacted the Sheriff's Office on Friday, February 16th, a little after midnight, and relayed the stated threat made by the two students. At 16 minutes after midnight, deputies went to the homes of both students and spoke with the students and their parent or parents. The students denied making a threat. The parents or parent assured deputies that the students had no access to firearms. Both students were directed not to go to school in the morning and wait until they were contacted by the Board of Education. The morning of Friday, February 16th, Corporal Angela Delosier, the school resource officer at Leonardtown High School, continued the investigation. Corporal Delosier, please come up and join us. Every passenger that was on the bus with the two juvenile suspects the afternoon prior was interviewed by Corporal Delosier. Corporal Delosier was familiar with the suspect juvenile students and in fact had addressed concerns with a parent or parents in the past concerning social media posts with the juvenile students posing with firearms. Corporal Delosier then briefed Assistant State's Attorney Daniel White on the case. Investigators were directed to obtain search and seizure warrants for the home of David Fairfax, the parent of one of the juvenile student suspects, and the person of juvenile suspect number 2. On Friday, February 16th at about 7 p.m., Sheriff's Office personnel searched the home of Mr. David Fairfax in Leonardtown, Maryland, and his shop, which was in the rear of the house, and part of his business for which he has a federal firearms license. Pursuant to the search warrant, 39 unsecured firearms were seized. These include a handgun in the 14-year-old son's room, and a handgun in the room of the 15-year-old juvenile suspect student's bedroom. Firearms that were secured were not seized. On Tuesday, February 20th, Sheriff's Office detectives briefed and met with the state's attorney, the FBI, the ATF, and the Board of Education. Detectives were then directed by the state's attorney to apply for an additional search and seizure warrant to seize all firearms and firearm parts from the home and shop of David Fairfax. At about 3:45 hours that same day, the search warrant was executed, and pursuant to that warrant, an additional 25 firearms were seized: 8 shotguns, 9 rifles, and 8 handguns, as well as gun parts, gunpowder, ammunition, and suppressors. Subsequent to that, 2 juveniles have been charged with threats of mass violence, and Mr. Fairfax has been charged with reckless endangerment and a firearms violation. The state's attorney's office, I'm sure, will have additional comments about that. It is the aim of the Sheriff's Office and our personnel every day to ensure the safety and security of our students, the staff, the teachers, and the administrative personnel, and we take every threat very, very seriously, as we have in this case. I cannot say this enough or emphasize this enough. The see something, say something works. And in this case, someone heard something, they said something, and immediately the communication began, which begot where we are today. I'd like to introduce the State's Attorney for St. Mary's County, Mr. Richard Fritz.
Thank you, Sheriff. Ladies and gentlemen, I can assure you that the State's Attorney's Office takes this case very seriously. This is a prime example how young people can become involved and can bring safety to their school system. This case would have never been determined unless it was for the young people who reported it to the authorities that allowed us to act. I think it's really great when you have the school system, the sheriff, the federal authorities, the ATF, the state's attorney's office, the FBI, that all come together instantaneously and move in order to quell a situation that could have become extremely tragic. One of the most important things that we sought immediately was to remove all firearms from the area in which this child could access them. When we went to the residence, not only were there many loose firearms lying around that he could access, but in the back of the house where the father maintained his shed, that was really unsecure. Anybody in the neighborhood who wanted to break and enter, wanted to walk by and check out an AR-15, probably would have had the ability to do so. The father was charged with reckless endangerment, part as a result of the manner in which he was storing his weapons in an unsecured environment in which anybody could access. The child has in fact been charged with a threat of mass destruction. If he would have entered into that school, he could have in fact created some very tragic situations. So again, I'd like to thank all the players, but most of all the students and the parents who have supported their young children and in fact encouraged them. As is stated, if you see something, say something, because we cannot do this without you, and we do not like to show up to a scene where mass destruction has been rendered to learn that perhaps 2 or 3 students could have stopped it by only saying one word. And again, as I've indicated, we take these charges very seriously, and we plan on prosecuting as hard as we can in order to obtain convictions. And hopefully upon obtaining those convictions, we can yank his federal firearms license. Thank you.
And if I could, just to conclude, prepared remarks and then whatever questions may follow. This is an example of a communication system working as intended, but it is just one incident and we know there will be others. We must all be engaged and vigilant and working together. SMCPS does this by partnering with the St. Mary's County Sheriff's Department and the State's Attorney's Office to share information in real time. And ultimately, we talk to our community members and our parents. We ask that you talk to your children, that you discuss their day over dinner, that you review their online interactions and their social media, and ultimately, when you see something, say something. And thank you very much.
There is a little bit of time for questions, and if anybody has anything? Yes.
Can you say what line of business, what the father's business was, and would these firearms be part of his business or part of the carrying on of his business?
Yeah, Mr. Fairfax has employment outside the home, I believe, on the Naval Air Station or connected to the Naval Air Station. His federal firearms license would be an aside from his primary employment.
Is it security or something at this?
I don't know. I don't know that.
But I mean, he didn't run a gun shop or like was he fixing weapons or anything like that at home?
That is part and parcel of this investigation, which will continue.
Was this a search warrant just for one house?
Just for one house, and an additional warrant for the person, the body of the juvenile suspect number 2.
Is the gentleman you're looking for, and you're still looking for, the adult, is he the father of the 2 children?
He is the father of one, and I'll let the state's attorney speak to the charges. I believe that the adult, Mr. Fairfax, has been charged.
But both kids were living in that house?
No, only one.
Okay, but did you say you found guns in both the children's bedrooms?
In the Fairfax home, there are 2 juveniles, 2 sons that live there. We found firearms, handguns, in both their rooms,
Okay,
unsecured.
And one last question. Can you talk about, did they make any specific threats to come to the school, to shoot up the school on social media or to anyone, as far as you know?
There were some social media posts, and I will divert to Corporal Delosier to speak to the social media posts. I don't have any information other than what I said in my prepared statement about the commentary, the statements made on the bus.
Do these teens have any disciplinary problems in school?
Well, could you answer my question,
Yeah,
please,
she's coming.
first? Thank you.
In relation to the social media post, the threats were not specific. One of the juveniles was actually posting with the firearms and indicated that 2018 would be lit with the gang. As far as your other question, could you just restate that for me so I make sure
No,
I
I guess
answer
the last
it?
question about the post, so thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Corporal, did you make any contact with them after these concerns were raised about the post? Was this before all of this happened? This was earlier, right?
This was earlier, yes.
Had you made any contact with them or their parents, the 2 suspects, upon finding out about those posts?
Essentially, the posts are part of the investigation. So the juveniles have been interviewed at this time, but that's still it's still ongoing.
Part of this investigation, there was no
Correct.
contact before the statements were made?
There are prior incidents, not of this magnitude, and they were addressed on that occasion, correct?
So they were contacted?
Yes.
And again, did they have any disciplinary problems in school? Or, I mean, you mentioned that they were addressed. How were they addressed?
So as far as speaking to specific disciplinary concerns with individual students, we're not going to comment on that at this time. I will tell you that anything that's reported is fully investigated and consequences are appropriately assigned. And as far as this most recent incident, the children will have their due process. They will have their opportunity, just as every student does in St. Mary's County Public Schools, to have a fair and impartial hearing of the evidence as it's presented. That comes after the work with the Sheriff's Department and the State's Attorney's Office.
And in the meantime, they're not allowed back at any Charles County public schools?
Well, St. Mary's County.
St. Mary's.
So if they're looking to transfer, that's something that Kim Hill will have to. As the matter is, I cannot speak to the disposition of the discipline for the children, but I can tell you that we are following up absolutely and explicitly our code of conduct.
Does anybody else have any
Okay.
further questions?
Do we have like a zero tolerance policy on any of the social media postings such as this? Like, you know, how often do we see these type of postings, and are people following up on postings like this? Seems like we need to have a zero tolerance on any of the social media posts such as this.
So any credible threat that's posted on social media and reported to school administrators or staff is investigated by school administrative staff, and then in turn, and with coordinated effort with the sheriff's department. We receive on a routine basis social media posts from people that are deemed to be threats, and we do follow them up accordingly.
Any difference in the procedures at schools going forward now? More SROs or anything like that, or?
Well, it's always a question of funding. I will tell you that what we are becoming is exceptionally well practiced in communicating with one another, and quite comfortable with rousing one another out of bed. I have the Director of Safety and Security back there, Mr. Mike Wyant, and it is routine, and we were discussing before we came out several times, every single month. We have something that happens in the middle of the night, and we are assembling ourselves after midnight, and then we are making a phone call to the sheriff's office and the duty desk to handle something that's come up. So we are going to continue to do all the work that we have done. We're going to continue the relationships that we have done. We have, after the safety and security night, one of the things that the parents said was that they wanted to make sure that when somebody navigates to the SMCPS website, that it's very easy to see where to report any incident that they may have encountered. And so actually, I'm going to stop from the PowerPoint of guns and focus on. So on our school system web page, we've built a gigantic, big blue button that says, if you see something, say something, click here, and that takes you right through our reporting software. And if you make a report using that software, it immediately goes out to a wide variety of staff, and it is truly monitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Somebody will see it and then rouse the team, and we will move into communicating how best to address the issue that's brought forward.
Was this investigation in all related to the threats today at Great Mills High School and Esperanza?
No. So today, across, and this is not just the St. Mary's County Public Schools. This is something that has happened across the state. We have Mr. Ed Clark, director from the Center for Maryland School Safety. We're seeing a lot of Facebook or Snapchat posts that are very vague about some perceived threat. We were informed last night of somebody had a Snapchat screenshot that said they were going to come and there's going to be a shooting at Great Mills High School. Very nonspecific, very vague. That got sent far and wide to pretty much every child that has a Snapchat account. And then sometime after 5 a.m. or 6 a.m., the post got changed, and instead of Great Mills High School, it then said Esperanza Middle School, and so then that followed. We do have some students legitimately upset about this and seeing this as a legitimate threat. We are working with the sheriff's office to run down the source, but it's truly a challenge to wade through all of that noise to say what is a credible threat that has to be actionable right now. We have to move on it, and then what becomes more or less a prank or somebody not truly understanding the gravity of what they're doing, sending stuff around on their Snapchat accounts. Again, I go back to the last statement. The truest partner and the best partner and the most important partner we have are parents in their homes with their children. We have 18,000 kids, we have 36,000 parents, and if everybody is aware of what their children are doing during the day, what their children are doing in the evening, what their children are doing on their phones, if everybody is taking their phones away after 8 o'clock at night and putting them in a charger stand and letting kids be kids, we probably get a good night's sleep. Thank you. Thank you very much for your attention, and hopefully we won't be gathering together again for this purpose. Thanks.